My father hung a piece of moldy cured meat on the beam of the house. Every day he poked it with a needle. The oil dripped out along the needle hole. Our family of 4 would line up and open our mouths to catch the dripping oil to fill our stomachs. That day it was my turn and I was so hungry. I couldn't help but roll my tongue over the cured meat. My father slapped me on the spot and angrily said, "That little bit of oil was for your brother. With one lick of your tongue you took away his 3 days' rations." The next day a stranger came to our house. He threw 8 copper coins on the ground. This was my worth. I didn't cry or make a fuss when the human trafficker took me away. But my mother couldn't stop crying. Yet she didn't even have the strength to stop me. She just tore off a piece of red cloth and tied it to my head. The axle turned little by little, pulling me further and further away. The cart was filled with girls all about my age. Each one was sallow and thin, dressed in rags. No one had the energy to speak. The only sound in the cart was the sound of sobbing. The cart would stop from time to time and the curtain would be lifted. Strangers would stand outside, looking us over like livestock. The girls who were chosen would always shrink back in fear, and then be forcibly dragged out. The crying quickly faded into the distance. With each one taken, the crying in the cart would suddenly intensify, then turn into even more desperate whimpers. Every time I saw a hand reach in from outside, my body would tremble uncontrollably, because being sold had only 3 possible outcomes: a wife for the poor, a maid for the rich, or a girl in a brothel. None of these paths were easy. But I also knew that if I stayed home I might not even have a chance to survive. So I didn't resent my father or my mother. I just wanted to see my brother. Would he know in the future that he once had a sister? Thinking of this, my heart couldn't help but feel sad. Not everyone in the cart was crying. Ji Yuan wasn't crying. She was 2 or 3 years older than me, and always sat quietly. I would occasionally gather my courage and talk to her. She, seeing that I was young, took good care of me. She didn't find me annoying when I chattered. When night fell and everyone was slumped over asleep, she would quietly move next to me and tell me about her family. "Seeing you reminds me of my sister," she said, her voice low. Her eyes suddenly turned red. From then on I called her sister. The axle turned slowly. We leaned on each other tightly. The human traffickers were cruel. They were afraid we would have the strength to run if we ate enough. So they would only give us food every few days. It was just a little thin porridge that could reflect a person's shadow, or a hard biscuit that was half the size of a fist. I was so dizzy from hunger. Sister Ozzy would always take advantage of people not paying attention, and secretly give me half of her share. If I refused, she would pretend to be angry, and say she would never talk to me again. To appease her, I would only dare to take a tiny bite each time. However, there were exceptions on the cart. There were 10 girls who were particularly beautiful, and dressed neatly. The human trafficker said they were going to the palace, so they dared not neglect them. They always ate substantial meals, and occasionally smelled a hint of oil. I looked at the sisters who could be sold at any moment, and then at the beautiful girls waiting to enter the palace. Vaguely in my heart, I understood the fate of people like us. From the moment we got off the car, it was destined to be different. I don't know what awaits me ahead. I leaned closer to Sister Ozzy. This broken car was drafty, only she was warm. I never dared to provoke those sisters who were going into the palace. But when they were bored, they started to have fun. Sometimes they would deliberately throw breadcrumbs at our feet to see if we would pick them up like dogs. Sometimes they would deliberately step on our fingers. Every time they bullied me, Sister Ozzy would immediately pull me behind her and glare at them with her dark, deep eyes. Those sisters were a little afraid of Sister Ozzy, so they didn't dare to confront Sister Ozzy directly. At most, they would just roll their eyes. After they left, Sister Ozzy whispered to me, "Ignore them, just bear with it and it will pass." I nodded. I was willing to endure anything else. But I never expected that one day they would actually set their sights on the red hair tie on my head. This was the only memento my mother left me. Naturally, I was unwilling to give it away, but I didn't expect that the more I refused, the more they wanted it. They even reached out to snatch it. I protected it with all my might. No, this was given to me by my mother. "Your mother? The mother who sold you for 8 copper coins?" Sister Ozzy, who was sleeping, woke up and saw this scene. She rushed over. "Don't touch her things. How dare you hit her?" The other girls going into the palace also gathered around. The car immediately became chaotic. The human trafficker lifted the curtain of the car. "What are you arguing about? Do you all want to be found?" He saw us fighting and his face turned ashen. Especially when he saw that the clothes of the girls going into the palace were wrinkled. He became even more furious. He pulled Sister Ozzy and me apart. "2 girls dare to ruin my business. I think you don't want to live anymore. When we reach the border, I'll sell you directly to the lowest class." I was so scared that I trembled all over when I heard this. Tears flowed uncontrollably. At this moment, Sister Ozzy, suddenly from the gap in the car floor, pried out a sharp-edged piece of broken stone. Then she slashed it across the face of the troublemaking girl. The 2 girls immediately started bleeding profusely. Everyone was stunned. Even the human trafficker was taken aback. Sister Ozzy stared at the human trafficker. Now neither of us can be sold. The human trafficker came to his senses, looking at the two with blood flowing down their faces. He raised his hand to hit Sister Ozzy. You scoundrel, I'll hit you. Sir, don't be foolish. We're about to reach the capital. Now their faces are ruined. If you hit us again, where will you find two replacements? The human trafficker's hand froze in midair. Sister Ozzy pointed at me and herself. Look closely, we are no less attractive than them. If you let us take their place, you can still maintain the price for this trip. If you can't deliver the people or deliver disfigured ones, you won't be spared by your superiors when you go back. Think carefully. The moment this sentence was uttered, the car fell into a deathly silence. Only the whimpering of the two scratched girls could be heard. The human trafficker was stunned. He looked me and Sister Ozzy up and down with his eyes. Before, because we were dirty and timid, he hadn't paid attention. Now looking closely, although I was thin and small, my features were quite delicate and Sister Ozzy was even more so. Those eyes were especially bright. Consider yourselves lucky, you two little things. From today on, you'll take their place. After that, Ozzy and I put on the clean clothes that the human trafficker sent. We wouldn't be sold into. But the place we were going to was the Imperial Palace. Is the palace better than home, Ozzy? I don't know, but at least we're still together. The carriage continued to move forward, biting and yipping. We were getting closer and closer to the capital. I leaned against Ozzy, watching the blurry fields flash by the carriage window, a heavy future weighing on my heart. The carriage entered the palace and Ozzy and I were separated. I was taken to the Imperial wardrobe and she went to the laundry bureau. She would sneak over to see me from time to time, slip me some food, or teach me a few things about palace etiquette. She was quick-witted and sweet-tongued. Before long she had befriended many of the managing sisters in the palace. I heard that the higher-ups valued her highly. I was much slower, learning rules slowly and speaking bluntly. My hands seemed to be naturally adept at needlework. At first the sisters in the Imperial wardrobe found me dull, but then they saw that the patterns I wove were new and lively. They often brought me fabrics, specifically requesting me to embroider them. While waiting to pick up my work, they would often gather and chat. I would lower my head threading the needle while listening with my ears pricked. The person they talked about the most was the Emperor. They said that the Emperor ascended the throne at such a young age. In the first few years the Empress Dowager's family held all the power. But the Emperor was truly capable. In just 3 years he had seized back all the power, completely suppressing the Empress Dowager's family. The person who contributed the most to this was the consort's brother. He was the current great general. At that time he stood with the Emperor without a second thought, allowing the Emperor to succeed. Therefore the Emperor treated the consort exceptionally well, giving her all the best things. But I found it strange. If they were so good to each other, why wasn't the consort the Empress? The sisters laughed. The Empress was the Crown Prince's consort when the Emperor was still in his princely residence. They had grown up together since childhood. So no matter how good the consort was, she could only be the consort. The next time I saw Ozzy, I told her all these things as if they were fresh stories, spilling them all out to her. I said the Emperor is so amazing, the consort is so glorious, and the Empress is so fortunate. After hearing my assessment, Ozzy didn't say anything. She just smiled. That smile was strange, as if it held many meanings. After a long time she sighed. This harem is truly interesting. Everyone has their desires. The consort desires affection, so she doesn't care about becoming Empress. And the Empress desires power. Regarding the consort and the Emperor's relationship, she can turn a blind eye. Then she turned and asked me, "Little sister, have you ever thought about what you want most in this palace?" I thought about it very seriously. First, that we can both be safe and sound. Second, to endure it well, and be released from the palace when I turn 25. I've calculated it. By then I'll have saved quite a bit of money. I'll take the money home to find my mother. Silly girl. Ozzy, what do you want? She didn't answer, her eyes looking into the distance. Only later did I understand what she wanted. That night I couldn't sleep. I happened to see Ozzy, and a person dressed as a guard, standing behind the rockery. I was startled and quickly hid. When Sister Ozzy returned alone, I jumped out to tease her. I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" "So you were looking for a suitable husband?" She was startled and quickly covered my mouth, pulled me into a darker corner. "Don't talk nonsense. I saw it all. Who is that guard, brother?" "That's not a guard, that's the Emperor." I suddenly looked up, my head buzzing. The Emperor, who they said was incredibly powerful, was actually wearing a guard's uniform and sneaking out at night. I couldn't believe it at all. Sister Ozzy pulled me to sit down. She said she discovered it by accident. Several times. She was near the laundry bureau. She saw a guard walking alone. His demeanor was nothing like an ordinary person. She became suspicious and secretly paid attention. Only then did she realize this was the Emperor on a private visit in disguise. She mustered up her courage and calculated when he would appear. Pretended to be washing something not far away, humming a local tune from our hometown. The first and second time he indeed noticed me. I pretended not to know who he was. He asked me questions and I answered respectfully. Not looking too much, not asking too much. And then it was just like you saw. He seemed to enjoy talking to me. Her voice carried a different kind of longing. My mind was in a mess. Sister Ozzy, this is too scary. What if we get caught? That's the Emperor. What are you afraid of? Little sister, didn't you ask me before what I wanted when I came to this palace? I didn't have an answer before. But now I can tell you. What I want is from now on. No longer a slave or a maid. No longer having to live by looking at others' faces. So I want to climb step by step. And the first step is to get rid of my identity as a palace maid. Marry the Emperor. Think about it, this is the current Emperor. If you can climb onto him, you will surely have endless glory and wealth. And no one will dare to bully us again. Anyway, since heaven let me enter the palace and gave me an opportunity, I have to take a gamble. I was stunned by her words and felt it made some sense. So how are things progressing now? Is the Emperor willing to marry you? Not clear yet, but since he came to talk to me, it means he's interested in me. I can't rush. I have to make him remember me. Later, just as Sister Ozzy predicted, that guard came to see her more and more often. Sometimes at night. Sometimes in the evening. Sister Ozzy sometimes met him. Sometimes she used the excuse of unfinished work and didn't see him. Sister Ozzy, how dare you not see him? Silly girl, if it's too easy to get, it won't be cherished. I have to make him feel that I am different from those women in the palace who try all sorts of ways to please him. After a while, one day Sister Ozzy suddenly ran to the imperial wardrobe to find me, with an irrepressible joy on her face. What has become? He revealed his identity to me. He said I was smart and sensible, different from others. I was so happy I almost jumped up. Not many days later, the chief eunuch read out the imperial edict. Sister Ozzy was conferred the title of Kai Ren. She moved into a beautiful palace. She put on silk and satin. She didn't forget me. Soon she invited me to her side to serve. From now on we sisters will be together. What I have you will have. Looking at the brand new Sister Ozzy, I was both happy and a little scared. Happy that we wouldn't be separated. Scared that this imperial palace is so big. Will the road ahead be easy? Sister Ozzy was very favored. The Emperor seemed infatuated with her. He ran to the glazed palace where we lived every few days. People in the palace are good at reading the wind. They used to ignore us. Now they all wear smiling faces. One day the Emperor came again. He was talking with Sister Ozzy in the room. I brought in tea and put it down respectfully with my head bowed. Just as I was about to withdraw, the Emperor suddenly called me. Look up. My heart panicked. I timidly raised my head. The Emperor's eyes were fixed on my face, as if stunned after a long while. He slowly said a sentence. You are very much like an old friend of mine. I was so scared that I quickly lowered my head, my heart pounding. Who was the Emperor's old friend? Sister Ozzy couldn't help but be curious. Unfortunately, the Emperor didn't tell her. What is your name? Your servant Chunyi. I have noted it. From then on, whenever the Emperor came to the glazed palace, he paid noticeably more attention to me. I was already a little afraid of him and he kept looking at me. When I got nervous, I became even more confused. Once when I was serving him snacks, my hand trembled and I almost dropped the plate. Another time he asked me a question. My mind went blank and I answered nonsensically. I was terrified, fearing he would blame me. But strangely, he wasn't angry at all. Instead, he burst into laughter every time I amused him. He said to Sister Ozzy, this little girl by your side is quite interesting. She looks so naive and amusing. Yes, since entering the palace, she has been by my side. I often treat her as a source of joy. I felt a little wronged. I am not intentionally trying to be a source of joy. I am genuinely afraid of him. But the Emperor seemed to think that this was good. One time Sister Ozzy was called away by the Empress. There were only me and a few young palace maids in the palace. For some reason the Emperor strolled over. He saw me frowning at a few freshly picked flowers, wondering how to put them in a vase. He walked over and stood beside me. Why are these flowers not pretty? They are pretty but I don't know how to arrange them. I am afraid of ruining them. If I insert them like this, will it be better? I watched him demonstrate. I was so surprised that my mouth slightly opened. He put down the flowers and looked at my foolish appearance. He suddenly sighed. Your naive appearance truly resembles her. When she was young and came to the palace to play, she was just as innocent. She wasn't afraid of me and even pestered me for candy. It's a pity that things have changed and that person is gone. I was sad about this for a long time. Only then did I understand. It turned out that he was looking at the shadow of another person through me. I felt a little strange, but I was even more curious about who the person the Emperor was talking about was. Only then did I understand. It turned out that he was looking at the shadow of another person through me. But the more curious I was, the more the Emperor refused to say. I thought I would never have the chance to know in this lifetime. But heaven still favored me. That day, when I went with Sister Ozzy to pay my respects to the Empress. Everyone get up and look up so I can see you. I timidly raised my head. Just as I met the Empress' gaze, Her face, which had been smiling gently, suddenly froze. The teacup in her hand trembled slightly, her eyes filled with complexity. There was surprise and nostalgia. And a trace of sadness that I couldn't understand at all. She told me I looked very much like her younger sister Lian Yu from her maternal family. So she was the old friend the emperor was talking about. Then the empress walked over and took my hand. What's your name? How old are you? Are you used to being in the palace? I answered softly one by one. She listened attentively. Her gaze towards me became more and more gentle, but beneath that gentleness, there was always a feeling I couldn't explain. From then on, the empress treated me exceptionally well. She often called me to her palace. Sometimes she would give me snacks and food. Sometimes she would just have me sit by her side and talk. She liked to see my dazed look when I spoke. She said I was simple-minded like a blank piece of paper. Life in the palace appeared peaceful on the surface, but there were undercurrents beneath. Many people were jealous of Sister Ozzy's favor. The noble consort was the first to bear the brunt. Her surname was Shu and she was the daughter of a founding hero. She often relied on her brother, who was a great general who had rendered meritorious service in protecting the emperor. She had always been arrogant in the palace. In the past, the emperor doted on her exclusively. Now that Sister Ozzy had appeared and taken away some of the emperor's attention, how could she tolerate this? At a palace banquet, how did it come to be said that the empress governed the harem too leniently? Too lenient? Some people below have forgotten their status and have developed improper thoughts. These words, who didn't know they were accusing Sister Ozzy of being favored and arrogant? But the noble consort's imposing aura made none of the many concubines present dare to speak in her defense. Finally, the empress raised her wine cup and smiled, trying to smooth things over. But she showed no respect to the empress. She continued to be presumptuous. Sister Ozzy felt stifled. I watched her but could do nothing. Not long after, the noble consort's targeting moved from covert to overt. Sister Ozzy endured it on the surface but was burning with anger inside. A few days later, she fell ill and couldn't eat anything. I was so anxious that I hurried to find an imperial physician. As a result, I ran into the noble consort. Oh, isn't this the little maidservant by Jikai Ren's side? Where are you rushing to in such a panic? Replying to the noble consort, Jikai Ren is seriously ill. This servant wants to invite an imperial physician. Seriously ill? She was fine this afternoon. How could she be so ill by evening that she needs an imperial physician? Could it be that she's faking illness to gain the emperor's pity? No, your ladyship. Jikai Ren, she really has a high fever. How dare you? Who gave you permission to look up when the master wasn't asking you? Who gave you permission to look up when the master wasn't asking you? The imperial concubine slowly walked up to me. Her sharp armor lifted my chin. This empress sees your eyes flickering, girl. Your words are unclear, you must have something to hide. Did your master tell you to feign illness? And stir up trouble before the emperor? No, your highness, no. You dare talk back? It seems I need to teach you a lesson. Don't you know the rules of this palace? Guards! Slap her face for me. 2 guards immediately stepped forward and grabbed my arms. Imperial concubine, your highness, I am telling the truth. 2 guards immediately stepped forward and grabbed my arms. Imperial concubine, your highness, I am telling the truth. Please, your highness, let this servant fetch the imperial physician. I kowtowed again and again, but it was useless. One of them raised her hand. A heavy slap landed on my face. I saw stars and my ears rang. As they hit me, they also found fault, saying I had offended the imperial carriage and didn't know my place. I felt dizzy and my consciousness began to blur. Finally, something heavy struck the back of my neck. My vision went black. When I woke up again, I found myself in a warm embrace. A faint scent of ambergris tickled my nose. It was the emperor. I was so scared I didn't dare to move. I thought I was still dreaming. He looked down at me and only then did I realize. We were already at the entrance of the glazed palace. Sister Ozzy, wearing an outer robe, walked out with a pale face. Seeing the emperor holding me, she was also stunned. Your Majesty, the emperor didn't speak. He gently placed me on Sister Ozzy's bed and ordered the imperial physician, who followed behind him, examine her. Later, I pieced together what happened from the palace servants' gossip. It turned out the emperor was just passing by the imperial garden. He saw the imperial concubines' people beating me, and they had knocked me unconscious. He was immediately furious and stopped the executioners. He personally carried me back. The emperor watched the imperial physician treat the wounds on my face. After a long silence, he said to Sister Ozzy, "It was my oversight that you suffered such grievances." Sister Ozzy shook her head with red eyes. My heart pounded. I secretly looked at the emperor's stern profile. For the first time, I felt that this person I had always been afraid of didn't seem so terrifying. He saved me. And the moment he carried me back, I felt his hand trembling slightly. The imperial physician finished examining me and then took Sister Ozzy's pulse. He turned and knelt before the emperor. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, congratulations." I stood aside, my heart in my throat, until I heard the imperial physician say the consort is with child. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. Immediately, immense joy surged through me. Sister Ozzy was pregnant. The emperor was overjoyed and held Sister Ozzy's hand. The smile in his eyes was undeniable. He immediately issued a decree promoting Sister Ozzy to Consort G, and bestowed many gifts. From then on, I was busier than anyone. Whenever I had free time, I would take out the best fabric I had and sew small clothes and bibs for the unborn little master. One day I was diligently sewing under the corridor. The emperor arrived. He quietly walked up beside me and watched me sew for a while. "Chunyi, why are the carp eyes you embroidered like this? One big, one small." I was so startled that my needle almost pricked my hand. I looked up and saw the emperor's smiling eyes. I pouted and looked at the work in my hands. How could that be? We're almost the same age. The emperor picked up a small jacket I was almost finished with. He looked at it, turning it over and shook his head. "The material is good and the intention is good. It's just that the pattern is a bit ordinary. The popular patterns outside the palace now are much more exquisite than this. They even use gold and silver threads to embroider with silk threads. It's truly beautiful when the sun shines on it." Outside the palace, I was only 8 years old when I entered the palace. I had long forgotten what the patterns outside the palace looked like. Envy and curiosity involuntarily appeared in my eyes. "Do you want to go out and see for yourself? It'll take you out to see some real treasures. See the freshest patterns." I was so startled that the needlework in my hands fell into the basket. "How can I leave the palace? The palace rules are strict." The emperor didn't give me a chance to refuse. He whispered a few words to the head eunuch by his side. Then he turned back and winked slyly at me. "Change into ordinary clothes and it'll take you out for some fresh air." I followed the emperor in a daze like this, along with a few guards disguised as servants. We left the palace through a side gate, sitting in a swaying carriage. I looked at the noisy street outside the carriage window with sugar figures being sold. Jugglers, peddlers shouting their wares. It was so lively. The emperor took me to the largest silk shop. The patterns inside made my eyes dizzy. Indeed, they were more vibrant than those in the palace. He asked the shopkeeper to bring out the newest styles. He showed me all the patterns. He also bought me several packs of embroidery threads and pattern books. After looking at the silks, he took me to eat at a famous wonton stall on the street. The hot wonton soup was delicious. My nose was sweating from eating. He also bought me a shiny sugar figure. I held it in my hand for a long time, reluctant to eat it. We played all day. In the evening, he took me to a tall restaurant. Standing by the railing, I could see more than half of the capital city. The lights were just coming on, twinkling like stars. Suddenly a few sharp sounds pierced the night sky. Then brilliant fireworks exploded one after another. I looked up, mesmerized, the wind blowing my hair. It also stirred the corner of his clothes beside me. I secretly turned my head to look at him. He was looking up at the starry sky and fireworks. His profile was no longer as tense as it was in the palace. At that moment I suddenly thought vaguely, so when he takes off his dragon robe, he's just a young man who takes girls out to play secretly and smiles at the fireworks. This thought made my heart jump. I quickly turned my head back, but he seemed to have noticed me peeking at him. "Chunyi, you look so beautiful when you smile." I was stunned for a moment. I looked up and met a pair of peach blossom eyes filled with tenderness. Warm breaths mixed in my ears. It was also at this moment that the fireworks suddenly rose. I couldn't help but be lost in thought. When we returned to Liuli, Palace lanterns were already hung at the palace gate. I held a basket full of spoils in my arms. My face was still flushed with excitement. The emperor walked half a step ahead of me. He seemed to be in a good mood too. "Next time I have some free time, it'll take you to try other people's pastries." I was about to nod when I looked up. I saw Sister Ozzy standing in the corridor at the palace entrance. It seemed she had come out to wait for us. Her gaze first fell on the emperor, then on me, beaming with joy. She had her usual gentle smile on her face, but for some reason at that moment, I saw it clearly. The look in her eyes when she looked at me changed abruptly. But Sister Ozzy didn't ask me about leaving the palace. All her thoughts were focused on the child in her belly. We looked forward to this child's birth every day. Everyone in the palace served her carefully. But one afternoon the consort suddenly felt like it, and invited Sister Ozzy for a walk in the imperial garden. Sister Ozzy wanted to refuse, but the consort was of high rank. She dared not offend her openly. I didn't follow. I continued sewing my little clothes in the palace. Not long after, chaotic shouts came from outside. I rushed out and saw Sister Ozzy being carried back. Her face was pale and there was a striking red stain on her skirt. She held my hand tightly. Tears mixed with cold sweat streamed down her face. "The child, my child." The imperial physician came and shook his head. Sister Ozzy's child was gone. She looked like her soul had been ripped out, lying motionless on the bed. Tears flowed uncontrollably. The emperor rushed over upon hearing the news and was furious. He immediately ordered a thorough investigation. The investigation found that on the steps where Sister Ozzy fell, pine pollen oil had been carefully smeared. Someone had deliberately led her here. At this moment all evidence pointed to the consort. The emperor rushed to the consort's palace and threw the evidence found on the ground fiercely. "It was an unborn child, how could you bear it?" The consort knelt down in a panic, grabbing the emperor's robe and crying, "It wasn't me, your majesty, I was jealous of consort G. But my heart for you is known to heaven and earth, even if I were stupid. I would never harm your imperial heir." The emperor couldn't listen at all, he was in a rage. He just wanted to get justice for Sister Ozzy. At this moment the empress arrived. To everyone's surprise she stood up to defend the consort. Your Majesty, the consort's temper is a bit spoiled. But I guarantee with my life, she is by no means someone who would harm the imperial heir. There is no conclusive evidence in this matter. To convict based solely on pine pollen oil would be too hasty. The Emperor was about to speak when she suddenly said something else. Your Majesty, are you going to repeat your mistakes? The tragedy of Lien Yu, do you want to go through it again? This statement was somewhat inexplicable, but both of them seemed to understand what it meant. Hearing the name Lien Yu, the Emperor's face instantly turned pale. He seemed to have all his strength drained and took a step back. In the end, the consort was deposed and demoted to Consort Shu. She stood there stunned, looking at the Empress. Tears of regret flowed down her face. She didn't regret harming Sister Ozzy's child. She stood there stunned, looking at the Empress. Tears of regret flowed down her face. She didn't regret harming Sister Ozzy's child, but regretted that she had often humiliated the Empress in the past, relying on her family, background and favor. But in times of crisis, the Empress was willing to stand up and defend her. How could she not feel ashamed and guilty? After seeing off the Empress, the Emperor and I returned to the glazed palace together. Sister Ozzy lay weakly on the bed and asked how the Emperor had dealt with the consort. The Emperor paused for a moment, his expression showing some guilt. Sister Ozzy's eyes turned red. She tugged at the Emperor's sleeve. That was our child, our first child. I was so looking forward to his birth. He was already 6 months old, just a little bit more. She said, looking at me, crying. My heart ached. The Emperor could only sigh. After all, she is the consort with high status and power. And the Empress defended her. I can't do anything. This was his final explanation. This is his final explanation. The palace became quiet after the Emperor left. Sister Ozzy leaned weakly in my arms. She cried for her child, cried for her bitter fate, and as she cried, her voice gradually lowered, carrying a stern hatred. Why? Why was my child killed by someone like this? And the murderer can live well. Her hand unconsciously tightened the corner of the quilt. Since the world is so unfair, then don't blame me for being ruthless. At this moment, something seemed to disappear from her eyes. The child was gone. Sister Ozzy's heart seemed to have died by more than half. She lay in bed all day long. The Emperor felt guilty. He issued 2 imperial edicts. The first one was to grant Sister Ozzy the title of Consort G, to console her grief over the loss of her child. The second one was to grant me the title of Spring Talented Lady. When this decree came down, I was preparing to give Sister Ozzy medicine. Hearing the eunuch's sharp voice announcing the decree, my hand trembled. The medicine bowl clattered to the ground. My mind went blank and I knelt on the ground, not understanding how this could happen. I never thought of becoming the Emperor's concubine. I just wanted to be her little palace maid and accompany Sister Ozzy. I planned to leave the palace and go home when I turned 25. I subconsciously looked at Sister Ozzy. Her face was expressionless. She just looked at me quietly. Her gaze was so strange that it chilled me. The day I moved out of the glazed palace, Sister Ozzy did not get up to see me off. I stood outside her chamber door, choked with sobs through the curtain, and called out, Sister Ozzy. There was silence inside. After a long time, her indifferent voice came. Spring Talented Lady, you are now the mistress of a palace. Take care of yourself from now on. I moved into the adorned sunset pavilion not far from the glazed palace, becoming an unremarkable one among the many concubines in the harem. The Emperor occasionally visited me, mostly just sitting and saying that my embroidery was interesting, and could temporarily make him forget his worries about court affairs. I often went to find Sister Ozzy, but she always refused to see me with various excuses. Occasionally I met her at a palace banquet, wearing a complex and gorgeous palace dress, surrounded by other concubines like stars around the moon. She was talking and laughing, with just the right amount of charm in her eyes. But that smile never reached her eyes. I watched with my own eyes as she, with a few casual words, caused a noble lady who had mocked her humble origins in the imperial garden to be banished to the cold palace for offending the Emperor. I heard with my own ears how she used a beauty out of favor to frame another concubine who was competing for the Emperor's favor, causing her to be sent to the imperial laundry. I couldn't hold back anymore. Once when her palace was empty, I broke in, grabbed her sleeve and tearfully begged her, Sister Ozzy, don't be like this. Fighting for power and status will surely backfire. We have no one to rely on. I am really afraid you'll be doomed. Let's go find the Emperor. Can we beg him to let us leave the palace? Sister Ozzy slowly pulled her sleeve back, a mocking curve at the corner of her mouth. Leave the palace? Little sister, you're still so naive. She walked to the window, looking at the square sky outside. From the day we were sold for 8 copper coins, we have had no home. Even if we leave the palace, where can we go? Don't be foolish. From the moment we entered the palace, our lives are bound here. This palace is our battlefield. Either climb over others to get ahead, or be crushed underfoot and turn to mud. Sister. Hearing that title, she suddenly just smiled. Sister, you call me sister. Yet you still cling to our pathetic sisterly affection. Then I only ask one thing of you. Never ever fall in love with the Emperor. My heart sank. She walked closer, her fingertips gently brushing my cheek. Once you fall in love, there will truly be only life or death between us. I looked at her. At that moment I understood. We were ultimately going our separate ways, embarking on two completely different paths. The Emperor heard about me and Sister Ozzy. He probably felt indebted to me and treated me even better. He wasn't as strict with rules as he was with other consorts. When he visited me he was often very casual. Sometimes he'd see me sitting by the window lost in thought. He'd quietly walk over, take out a bag of roasted chestnuts from his sleeve. I'd deep peel them for him and he'd watch me with a smile. The spring warmth is most comfortable here with you. When he was tired from reviewing memorials he'd come to Zhuixia Pavilion to sit. He wouldn't say anything, just lean on the couch, letting me embroider beside him. He said the sound of needle and thread passing through silk could calm him. I knew this was his kindness towards me, a gentle kindness without too much desire. But looking at the deep palace walls outside, I only felt a sense of emptiness. Another spring arrived. Sister Ozzy was promoted all the way to noble consort, her influence almost overshadowing the Empress. Her palace was filled with people trying to curry favor. I saw her a few times from afar in her noble consort's ceremonial robes. Her hair adorned with pearls and jade, just like the once powerful consort Shu. Occasionally the Empress would visit me. She was a gentle person, but her brows always carried an unshakable weariness. One day holding her tea she suddenly spoke of Sister Ozzy. Talented Lady Chun, you are currently favored by the Emperor. Have you considered that such favor, if it fades, will place you in opposition to noble consort Ji? I lowered my head, unsure how to answer. She sighed softly and told me the story of Lian Yu. She was my younger cousin. Not only did her appearance resemble yours, but her personality was similar too. When she first entered the palace she thought consort Shu was a good person. Later the consort saw my cousin becoming more favored, so she framed my cousin for stealing an imperial gift. The Emperor refused to intervene and uphold justice. That girl had a strong spirit and couldn't defend herself. She died of grief. So for all these years the Emperor has felt indebted to her. Your Highness, since that's the case, and you said the noble consort harmed your sister, then why did you speak up for her last time she was framed? Hearing my question the Empress paused for a moment, then burst into laughter. It's precisely because I saw with my own eyes how my sister died that I knew the noble consort was also being manipulated that time. If I didn't help her, should I just watch another unjust case unfold? This Empress knows your sisterly bond is deep, but, Your Highness, please don't worry. Sister Ozzy wouldn't do that. She might have changed, but she wouldn't harm an innocent person. Silly girl, you're still so naive. In this palace, trust is the most dangerous thing. After she left I sat alone for a long time. I knew everyone in the palace now thought Sister Ozzy was a wicked woman. But I remembered Sister Ozzy, who used her body to shield me from the wind and snow in the carriage. I remembered that. My Sister Ozzy, who gave me the only piece of hard biscuit. The memories are burning hot, already deeply imprinted in my heart. So I really can't, because of a few words from others, just throw her away. I still believe her. Even if everyone in the harem says Consort Ji is cruel and ruthless, I still believe that deep down in her heart, there's still a trace of how we relied on each other. That's my Sister Ozzy. She's the one who treats me the best in the world. 3 days later, the Emperor granted Sister Ozzy the authority to manage the 6 palaces. And from that day on, the Empress and Sister Ozzy began to fight. It moved from the shadows to the open. You advance one step, ill block one step. I watched with a pounding heart. Sister Ozzy won the last round. She found some evidence from somewhere, implying that the Empress family was forming factions in the court. The Emperor hated this the most and was furious. Although he didn't depose the Empress, he never went to the Empress palace again. He also demoted several of the Empress uncles. Everyone in the palace said the Emperor and Empress had grown apart. I knew this must have been Sister Ozzy's doing. My heart felt heavy and uncomfortable. I secretly ran to see the Empress. Her palace was eerily deserted. She sat alone by the window looking outside. I knelt before her and apologized to her on behalf of Sister Ozzy. Your Highness, I am sorry to Sister Ozzy. She didn't mean to. She just what? I couldn't finish. The Empress didn't blame me. She just smiled. That smile was extremely weary. She pulled me up. Silly child, matters in this palace, how can they be explained with a simple right or wrong? I don't blame you. You should also take good care of yourself. And not long after this incident, a shocking piece of news exploded through the harem. The Empress was poisoned. Rumors immediately spread throughout the palace. Everyone said Consort Ji was the one who poisoned her. The Emperor was furious and ordered a thorough investigation. As they investigated, the clues actually pointed to Sister Ozzy's palace. That former consort, who had already been demoted to Lady Shu, perhaps wanted to repay the Empress' past kindness in protecting her, and kill Sister Ozzy to avenge the Empress. But how could Lady Shu be a match for the current Sister Ozzy? The guards easily subdued her. Sister Ozzy didn't even let her get close. She just looked at her coldly and said insubordination and attempted assassination, and ordered her to be beaten to death on the spot. I heard the news and was filled with anxiety. So I begged the Emperor I wanted to see Sister Ozzy. The Emperor looked at me kneeling on the ground and crying uncontrollably. Finally he sighed and agreed. When I went, the palace she lived in had already been sealed off. The palace servants had also been taken away. The setting sun shone through the carved lattice windows. She sat alone in the empty main hall. She was wearing her favorite noble consort's ceremonial dress. On her head was the phoenix hairpin the emperor had bestowed upon her when she was first made. Consort G. She looked up when she saw me enter. Her face was expressionless. Are you here to blame me too? I shook my head desperately, tears streaming down my face. No, Sister Ozzy, I know it wasn't you. The Empress incident, it definitely wasn't you. You were framed, weren't you? Silly girl, even now you still believe me? But this time you believed wrong. The poison was mine. Why? Why? Her position was too high. As long as she lived, I would never be able to be Empress and would always be beneath her. I am not reconciled, little sister, I am not reconciled. At this moment the young eunuch lowered his head. Holding a glass of wine, he walked in. That was the poisoned wine bestowed by the emperor. Sister Ozzy's eyes trembled as she looked at the wine. Then she picked it up. Her hands were shaking and the wine sloshed out. I struggled desperately but was held back tightly by someone. Don't drink it, Sister Ozzy, wait for me. Il begged the emperor to retract his decree. Little sister, the thing I regret most in my life was bringing you into this palace. I originally wanted to see you live a good life with me, so you wouldn't have to starve and freeze or look at people's faces anymore. But I was wrong. I brought you into another hell. Don't blame me, okay? I don't blame you, Sister Ozzy. I've never blamed you. I only regret not being able to take you away sooner. I hate that you are so deeply trapped and I am powerless. Then she tilted her head and drank the poisoned wine in one gulp. The wine glass fell from her hand, making a crisp shattering sound. She looked at me as her body slowly went limp, a trace of dark blood oozing from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes, however, kept looking at me until they closed completely. Sister Ozzy. My Sister Ozzy is gone. That Sister Ozzy who in the bumpy carriage gave me the last bite of her biscuit and protected me with her frail body. She finally died in this man-eating palace. Died in front of me. Sister Ozzy just left like that. From then on I became numb. The emperor came to see me and I hid in the inner chamber, refusing to see him. Chunyi, come out, let me see you. I didn't make a sound, nor did I move. I knew I resented him. Resented him for causing the rift between his sisters. Resented him for bestowing the poisoned wine on Sister Ozzy. Resented him for knowing the bond between Sister Ozzy and me, yet still treating us this way. And so we fell into a cold war. People in the palace are good at reading the room. Seeing that I was out of favor, they started to fawn over some and step on others. The charcoal in my rations was damp. The food served was cold. I didn't care. I was just going through the motions every day. Days passed like this one by one, until the Shanggong Bureau sent in a new batch of young palace maids. I happened to overhear the steward scolding someone. A name made my heart skip a beat. A Meow. That was the name of Sister Ozzy's youngest sister. I secretly ran to take a look. The little maid named Meow was huddled at the back of the crowd. Her head bowed timid, but her features were exactly like Sister Ozzy's in her youth. Looking at her, my nose suddenly felt sore. Those snobbish people in the palace were bullying a Meow because she was new. They pushed all the dirty and tiring work onto her, and also withheld her food. Once I saw an old pour the congee into a Meow's bowl, forcing her to drink it. A Meow held the bowl, tears welling up in her eyes. But she dared not resist. I angrily went over and knocked the bowl away. Get lost. If I ever see you bullying her again, I'll kill you. Looking at the stunned Meow, I pulled her to the water gang. I carefully wiped her hands. Thank you, concubine Chun. Looking into her eyes, my heart felt both sore and soft. I gently wiped away her tears. Don't be afraid, I'll protect you from now on. The emperor, I don't know from where, heard about this, and came to Zhuishuen Pavilion to find me again. He probably thought this was an opportunity to ease the tension. Chunyi, I know you are kind-hearted. If you like taking care of that little palace maid, you can transfer her here to serve you. I still don't want to talk to him. In the end, he left disappointed. I brought Meow over and taught her the rules. Told her which people in the palace not to provoke, which places not to go. I saved the good food from her rations for her. Watching her gain weight little by little and her face regain color, I seemed to be on Meow, desperately making up for what I owe Sister Aji. One night Meow was asleep and talking in her dreams, crying out for mother and sister. I sat by her bed, tucking her in. Looking at her tear-streaked little face, I thought, Sister Aji, do you see? I've grown up too. I've also learned to take care of you the way you took care of me. To take care of your sister. As long as I am in this palace for one day, no one will be able to bully her. The emperor and I were in such a stalemate. He came a few times but was shut out. Later he didn't come often. Until a snowy night. Suddenly there was a commotion outside. Palace maids ran in a panic to report that the emperor was drunk. He came straight to Zhou Shazan and couldn't be stopped. Before I could react, the palace doors were pushed open with a bang. The emperor, reeking of alcohol, stumbled in front of me. Chunyi. How long are you going to resent me for Sister Aji's matter? She brought it upon herself, harming the imperial concubine and poisoning the empress. Which of these is not a capital offense? Did she bring it upon herself? Your Majesty, Sister Aji's matter. Did she really bring it all upon herself? Wasn't there a bit of your hand in it? Wasn't there a bit of your hand in it? He froze, his tired face turning to surprise. As if he was meeting me for the first time. Everyone in the palace thought I was foolish. Thought I was naive and easily deceived, but I just didn't like to fight. It doesn't mean I don't understand. For example, the instigator of all this is the emperor. He deliberately favored Sister Aji, allowing a palace maid from the laundry bureau to ascend to heaven in one step, making her the target of public criticism. He also deliberately showed favoritism towards Sister Aji in front of the noble consort, enraging the noble consort with jealousy and making her target her everywhere. Even tacitly granting the power to manage the 6 palaces to a helpless palace maid, and secretly fanned the flames of conflict between Sister Aji and the empress, making them fight to the death. He used my Sister Aji as the best knife to clear the obstacles in the court and the harem for him. Sister Aji finally understood. That's why she begged me never to fall in love with the emperor. She was protecting me, afraid I would follow in her footsteps. She finally admitted to all the crimes and drank the poisoned wine willingly, also fearing I would be foolish and go to avenge her, getting myself involved. Sister Aji thought she was fighting for herself, but she didn't know that every step she took was within your calculations. All of this, I understood clearly. How could you? His throat tightened and he couldn't finish his sentence. I raised my head and met his gaze without fear. Your Majesty, do you want to ask how I know? The personal maid by the noble consort's side secretly came to find me after the noble consort's death. She told me that on the day Sister Aji lost her child, you told the noble consort to make peace with Sister Aji, and casually mentioned that the flowers in the imperial garden were blooming beautifully. That's why Consort Shu invited Sister Aji to stroll in the imperial garden. So from the moment I heard that sentence, I understood my Sister Aji was being used, and many questions that I couldn't figure out also had answers at this moment. The emperor was silent for a long time. Finally he spoke. It is I who admit it. From the first moment I saw Ozzy in the laundry bureau, I knew she was smart and ambitious. She was a useful blade. She had no one to rely on, so after the deed was done she could be easily disposed of. Thus I played along with her plan. I used her to balance the harem and suppress the imperial relatives, to do things that Lien could not do. I admit to all of this. I have indeed made countless mistakes, but there is one thing I have never lied to you about. My feelings for you are genuine. At first I noticed you because you resembled Lian Yue, which made me feel a sense of closeness. But then every time we spent time together, taking you out of the palace, seeing you smile so happily over a bowl of wontons, watching you quietly embroider, I slowly discovered how wonderful you are. Spring's intention. His eyes were red. I looked at him and suddenly found it incredibly laughable. Your Majesty, you are sincere with me. Then am I not with you? Looking at this man, the night outside the palace seemed to reappear before my eyes. His smiling profile under the fireworks. Such a handsome young man. He showed me the vibrant world outside the palace, stood up for me when I was bullied, and remembered to bring me my favorite snacks. My heart is also made of flesh. How could I not be moved? I also wish to forgive you, Your Majesty, and live in harmony with you. Growing old together. But I cannot, Your Majesty. I cannot betray Sister Ozzy. Whenever I think of you, I remember her appearance before she died. My heart aches so much. I promised her I did love you. But this love was long ago separated by the palace walls, by schemes, by a life. Your Majesty, we are no longer possible. I forgive you. Can you let me go too? This is my final answer. He opened his mouth wanting to say something more, but I took a step back and slowly knelt down, my forehead touching the cold ground. Your Majesty, Sister Ozzy's sister Amio is still in the palace. She knows nothing, she is just a child. If you truly love me, I beg Your Majesty to show mercy and let us leave the palace. He stood there, his shadow stretched long. After a long time he finally replied, all right, I understand. Then he slowly turned and walked away step by step. It snowed the day we left the palace. I held Amia's hand. She wore a thick new cotton coat, her little face rosy from the wind. Sister Chunyi, where are we going? Home. I know Sister Ozzy used her life to buy me this way out. From now on, under the vast sky and sea, I only wish to live well with her sister.